Just quick introduction. My name is Kelvin. I am with Dimension Data. It's a system integration company, right? And I cover around the region within the Asia Pacific. So today, what I'm going to talk about is really about bridging startups and enterprises together. And so this is what I am going to talk about, right? So very quickly, today almost everything that we see is on digital, right? In an enterprise world, right, digital transformation is really one of the top priorities for organizations, right? Here is a number from Deloitte Insights. So 94% of enterprises today are trying to transform, right? And according to the report, they're all top priorities of large organizations. So if you are looking at, helping enterprises to transform, and this is one of the very big opportunities that you look at, right? And according to IDC, right, based on last year's survey, right, 55% from a forecast perspective of enterprises will be digitally determined by 2020, right? And this is really significant because what it means is enterprises that by 2020 they will be leveraging very advanced cloud-capable systems, right? Stuff like machine learning, AI, deep learning, IoT device, and they will be considered as digitally determined organizations, right? And from a spend perspective, right, there is a constant increase. So from last year, 2018, to this year, 2019, we are looking at a 22.7% increase for organizations trying to put their budget onto their digital transformation journey, right? So as part of this big pool, since last year, right, data has shown that just within the Asia Pacific region, there's already a $386 billion in market spent, right, that companies has already invested on their journey of digital transformation. Right, so like I said, I've traveled across the region for quite a while. For the last 12 months, the organizations that I've spoken to, right, has all spoken about digital transformation. They all want to transform. And there's this big three things that they ask for, right? Number one is really data, right? They talk about data and they talk about digital operations. And then there's another conversation around interconnectivity. So what is data? So the data conversations that the clients comes to us, it's always about how do I monetize my data? I've got this CRM database, I've got my ERP database, I've got my consumer database. How do I make use of data, right? What are the solutions that can help the enterprise from an organization's perspective to be able to harvest, extract data insights, and then to be able to triage to help drive their business agenda and drive revenue for the business, right? And then when you look at the second component where organizations starts to talk about digital ops, right? With the availability of cloud resources like AWS, right? Organizations are now trying to create new digital native apps, right? And this creation of applications are commonly being created using agile frameworks, right? It helps to accelerate from a speed and a velocity point of view, right? So stuff gets created very fast, and this fundamentally creates a problem, right? The enterprise has very monolith and very domain silo construction of the way they operate IT, and that's where you have got this two-speed problem. Right now, you have got one team that is very quick in agile delivery, and then you have got a team that is really slow in trying to, go through the ITSM processes and change processes, and this fundamentally creates this whole big problem, right? And the question is really, how do I then use that velocity and innovation from the agile team to be able to help the entire organization to accelerate? And that is the second ask. And the third is really about using the APIs and connection. So enterprises are very cognizant about, they need to innovate fast, right? You've got, given an example, the financial sector, you have got the fintechs coming in, creating a lot of new tech, right? You've got the insure tech as well, and they are cognizant that the smaller companies are a lot faster and a lot more agile. And right now, what organizations are doing is they're trying to create an ecosystem where they open up their APIs to allow startups to be able to connect to them, right? To be able to collaborate and extract some information and to be able to share capabilities around them. Right. So from a startup and enterprise perspective, what are the major differences, right? You've got, so I've broken down into this very simple chart, right? In comparison from a strength and weaknesses perspective, right? So we are aware, right? Enterprises has been around for a long time. They have their own ecosystem, right? If you are talking to a manufacturing company, they have their own ecosystem of partners. You're talking to a bank, they have their own customers that they talk to. They have got their own insurance agents that they talk to, right? They have the entire economy behind them. So they have the power, and they also have the ability of financing power, right? But the problem with enterprises is because they are huge, right, and they're in just massive in sheer size, they're typically a lot less agile, right? They try to move, but when they start to be agile, right, they need to look at from a back-end office perspective. Many of these companies still work in silos, right? I've got a supply chain department that doesn't talk to the procurement, and then I've got the IT that has multiple silos. I've got network team, I've got my security team, I've got my compliance team, and then they don't really kind of collaborate very well, unlike the startups. And I myself, maybe a quick question in the audience, right? How many of the people in the audience are from enterprises? All right, a few. So for those that are from enterprises, you guys will probably be very well aware of, right? Every time when there is an initiative and there's an investment cost, right, you will end up with meetings after meetings, right? Business case after business case, right? Can you create an Excel spreadsheet, convert to a PowerPoint? It's never ending, right? Because you've got multiple stakeholders to try to convince, and that's where the problem with enterprises, right? But if you look at the flip side, the startups. So startups are typically, open-minded, flexible, right? You react to market. So from a startup perspective, when you create a product, right, you're addressing a specific business outcome, a specific problem, and thereby you are a lot agile, and you don't have a baggage of legacy, right? And that's where the startup world comes. But when you look at the flip side of it, it's when a startup tries to operate in a large ecosystem, right? You have got a lesser financial backing, right? And then you operate in basically, monthly horizons, right? You need to make sure that your money is coming in, and then you have also got lower brand equity, right? In comparison, where an enterprise has been established in the market for a long time, right? It's a lot easier to sell. If I am, for example, IBM, right? I walk into a company, everyone has heard of IBM, but if I'm this small little XYZ company, right? Clients tend to question, and that's fundamentally different, right? But all this can be complemented. So if you look at the strengths and weaknesses from both sides, right? If we connect both the startups and enterprise together, right? There's a lot of innovation that can be done, because from a solution construct perspective, you can leverage the enterprise's capability of branding, and then you can leverage what the startup can offer from an innovation perspective, right? Right, and throughout the region, I myself have traveled, and I see a lot of struggles, right, between the startup and enterprises, and a lot of these collaborations and partnerships do come to a halt, right? And there are many factors to it, right? So I'm just going to give you the top 4 that I see. Right, first is all around enterprise processes, right? And when we talk about enterprise processes, we know that large organizations, especially across the multiple different verticals, they have their own processes, right? And a lot of this governance, right, if you try to plow through it, it's actually quite daunting and long drawn, right? And we invest a lot of time trying to get through just a product launched. Right. The next is really the mismatch of expectations. So the misalignment of visions and objectives between a startup will always be different, right? And many of this instance, it creates this roadblock, right, between the partnership and collaboration. And this when this happens, it causes massive friction. And when this friction comes, right, you get into sometimes heated arguments or different objectives, and the project that you're trying to deliver or the product gets stalled. Right, and when this gets stalled, obviously then you have this issue of trust, right? And when the relationship between two enterprise, the enterprise and the startup starts to deteriorate, you see sometimes also there's an extreme where the enterprise wants to push the boundaries, because as an enterprise you have got different stakeholders, and they say, look, can you perform an additional change in a specific feature, and that's where they try to push boundaries. So you've got two scenarios, right? So you have got a scenario where the startup agrees, right, overcommits, and then you underdeliver, and that's one scenario that we see quite often. Right. So the second scenario that we see is really where startups know their capability and think about it and say, look, I think I'm not going to commit to this, and I won't commit to a specific timeline. So with that, the trust actually breaks down quite fast. And what happens is that your entire project in the partnership and collaboration with enterprise comes to a halt. Right, the last thing that I want to highlight is really what I term it myself as musical chair syndrome. Right, so in the musical chair syndrome, what happens is we understand that large organizations are founded by multiple business units and different stakeholders, right? And when you deliver a new product and function and feature, right, you want to go through and launch, and there's always a enterprise process, right? You need to go through a specific governance process, where then the next question is, who is going to approve it? Who is going to sign off? Right, after who is going to sign off, you have got, oh, I forgot, because the feature is contributed by the next department, in the next building, can you talk to them as well? And when this happens, right, you have got this musical chair syndrome, where can I pass the responsibility from one department to another department, one stakeholder to another stakeholder. And this actually burns quite a lot of time and resources for startups. And sometimes it does creates a big problem with this as well. Right. So I'll give you a case study. So this is actually from a very good friend of mine who ran a startup. Right, and this is what I call the hard truth. So this very good friend of mine had started off this analytics company. It's privately funded, right? The product actually goes into the internet and understand what he calls customer sentiments. So he understands the buying sentiments of users, right? It also the engine is also capable of helping to drive marketing campaigns based on the feedback and sentiments that is of. And if, let's say, I'm searching for a specific product, let's say a weight management product, right? It tells me that if your consumers are happy with this, it understands the competitor landscape as well. So that's what the company is about. And they managed to hire or acquire, right, quite a handful of enterprises and a telco as well. So the struggle that he had with this telco, right, was exactly what I said from a musical chair syndrome perspective, right? So he met the COO of the company, of this telco, very happy with the product, went to the multiple business unit and said, hey, I've got this good product, from analytics, can you work around with this company and see what we can do from a user acquisition and user retention perspective. So he worked on that. So all the business units were very interested, right? High potential. Everyone says, yes, I think it's good, right? And the problem came when the product is about to be launched, right? When the product is about to be launched, this business unit that's supposed to be signing off says, no, I think I'm going to share costs with another department, right? Can you then talk to the other department? And then the other department will say, no, I think I want a specific feature change. Can you tweak it that? And this entire musical chair within this whole activity ran for a couple of months, right? And that's what he faced, right? When he overcame that, then there was a second problem, right? The second problem was really about training and enablement, because when a large organization with thousands of employees launch a specific service or product, right? You need to enable the entire company, right? From a sales perspective, from a pre-sales perspective, how do I go to market? What is the messaging? And when he looked at the requirement for the enablement, he had easily like 4 to 5 different departments cutting across easily close to 100 people to enable. And that was the struggle that he had. So I asked him, right, if given a chance for you to be able to relook at this whole engagement again with this telco, what are the few things that you will do, right? I think this is his answer on the board here. Lesson number 1 is you need to be able to create a very simple framework and help define your scope. What are you going to achieve with this partnership? What are you going to deliver from a partnership perspective, right? And you need to be able to understand the whole decision flow of an organization, right? Because to run a startup, you only had that few people. I mean, if you're not a super huge startup, right? You have very simple process flow and people to work with. But when you start scaling and when you go to enterprises, right? You need to know who is the power players, right? Who pays for the bills? Who gives the governance approval? Because one of the other struggles that he had was at the very final stages of product launch, right? Someone in the room flagged and said, oh, we actually haven't gone through security and governance compliance. So we need to go through that round. And that took him another 4 weeks before the product gets launched. So he burned another 4 more weeks of resources and time. All right, and that's where you need to understand the regulatory part of things, right? And then from a enablement standpoint, you need to be ready to engage enterprises, because enterprises has a massive workforce, right? You need to be able to create sales play, sales plan, and then to be able to start engaging them at scale, right? If you can't, right, you need to think about finding a different partner that is capable of doing it very quickly, because every hour or every day when you delay the enablement, it's cost to a startup, right? And look, corporate culture basically eats startup for breakfast, right? The amount of requirement that's coming from enterprises is tremendous. And what the enterprises would love to do is to harness this energy and power that's from startup to help them accelerate, right? And that's where you've got this whole very great story from a startup perspective. But then when you look at it from an enterprise, you have got a lot of process and governance, right? And when you start talking to both parties, you have got very mixed experience. And from a regulatory standpoint, then it's like you have enterprise trying to convince a startup to say, no, you need to follow my governance framework, and the startup will say, no, I try to be agile, right? And sometimes all it needs is someone to be able to bridge this, and that's where we as Dimension Data has this capability, right? I mean, we've been in the industry for quite a while, right? You can leverage us on the credibility of where we have with enterprises, right? We understand how enterprise operate from a model perspective, right? And there's also dependencies within organizations, and I think there's something that we can offer from an approach perspective, right? If not, when you do it without dimension data, right? Just in general, you need to be able to understand, who you are dealing with. What kind of processes is there a compliance governance? Is there a political play, for a specific product that you're trying to launch, right? Again, two is stronger than one, right? So we as dimension data has five big portfolios. If you look at it, right? We have something called customer experience, right? We have got cybersecurity, digital consulting, digital workplace, and digital infrastructure. So these are the few offerings from an enterprise space that you can look at and you can try to leverage, right? And just to give you a quick example where we joined and team up with a startup. So this startup came to us and they are really focused on risk management and credit ratings. Right. So when they came to us and say, look, can we partner you guys? Because we're from the fintech world. We're trying to get into a couple of financial institutions to be able to collaborate and launch a specific product. And what happens is when we sat down and we start to create this whole strategy and frame, we realize that the startup is really good at what they are doing, right? But they've got one single problem. Because when they launch a product and run at scale, right, the question is how are you going to do call triage? And there's a big missing component that's call center. Right? So if a user calls or another company calls the bank, who is going to do that call triage? Who is going to fix the problem? Right? And that is the call center management capability that we offer, right? From a financial, from a vertical offering perspective, right? So yeah, I'm going to give another use case. So this is with a real estate and retail company, right? So they came to us with a specific demand. They wanted to build the next generation future mall, right? And they want to, if you are here in the previous sitting, you saw Amazon Go. They wanted to build an autonomous checkout system within the mall, right? Couple of objectives. They want to be able to help drive the amount of footfall, right, within their mall, and obviously to be able to drive revenue as well, right? And what we did was really, we helped them to establish a digital framework, right? And we helped them to first transform the backend, right? Because if you look at from a capability perspective, the startup that we engaged had the ability to provide the video analytics and the smart cards and the rest of the components, but the missing components was really about Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi systems, the enterprise Wi-Fi. So what we did was we deployed that Wi-Fi, right, to be able to track the amount of footfall, the hotspots within the connectivity, right, and we help them to connect to the US partner in US that has that autonomous checkout solution. Right, and then we help them integrate into the backend CRM system, right? Because they already had this is a legacy enterprise, right? They already had existing CRM ERP system, and we help them to be able to connect all this, and then to be able to then provide them a backend support and ongoing support. So if the kiosk breaks down and if something breaks down, what do you do? And that's what we offer. Right, and from an outcome perspective, we basically help this client which is running the mall to accelerate their digital initiatives, right? We provided, again, a call center and a service desk center with ongoing maintenance support, right, for this client, and we ensure that the entire solution we provide was end-to-end, right? So my final slide. So these are the few key takeaways. Right. Number one, right, we all know that the truth, enterprise are looking for innovative solutions. Right, no doubt about it. That's why everyone is here. Now, number two, startup needs to understand the enterprise landscape. Because when you start engaging enterprises and without knowing who are the power players within the enterprise, you're going to go through a lot of problems. Right. Number three, we all know that when we combine both and we bridge both startups and enterprise together, a lot of innovation, a lot of work can be done. It may not be as fast as agile, but it can be done. And again, and sometimes all it takes is just someone to help you bridge the gap. And that's what we are here for. Right, and in closing, so I mean, our responsibility as Dimension Data is to help our clients succeed. Right, we want to be able to help our clients move fast and accelerate in the whole digital journey. Right, and to us, we think that we believe in possibilities in the digital world. Right, thank you.